I'm Karina Stewart, and I'm the creator of the Activate Your Wealth Code show. I cannot wait for you to dive right into this episode. I created this show so that you could unlock and activate your wealth codes, so that you'll remember that greatness that lives inside of you and step right into your divine destiny. I know that once you do, nothing will stop you from making a massive difference on the planet. All right, step right in, and I'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to Karina Stewart's Activate Your Wealth Code, where you get to unlock your infinite wealth, realign with your divine destiny, and make massive change in the world. My name is Megan Torres, and I'm your host here today with Jennifer Hough. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Megan. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, Jennifer, as a best-selling author, speaker, and alchemist, you see the world and individuals in a multidimensionally and holographic way. Can you describe that? What does that mean?
Sure. Just so you know, my background is in economics and accounting. So for me, this is not something that I did my whole life. In fact, I probably would have resisted it with great fervor. But I got really, really sick. And as a result of my getting really, really sick, I just happen to have this instinct inside. It's my favorite saying ever. And that saying is, there's always a way. So knowing that there was always a way, even though I had no idea that what I do or what I can see was even possible, the phrase "there's always a way" guided me to various, and I've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on alternative practitioners, by the way, which I was not even open to when I was going, but I was willing to do anything to get rid of the migraines. So, and the depression and all the things that had come along. So what it means to see holographically is for me, it was part of my healing. It was being able to fully integrate with the splintered pieces of myself, the splintered pieces of which are present for every single human, which once I started to see holographically, I started to see that every human has multidimensional DNA that's living out in other dimensions of consciousness. Again, very weird language for someone who's an economist and an accountant.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to be really clear that the entirety of who we are is just 1% this three-dimensional being, this three-dimensional body that basically is a conduit for, all of creation to pour through these personality traits and skill sets and past life experiences that we get to live. We get to go on a journey that is the future trajectory that's already been set in motion with our choices and our free will to create upon creation something that's never been created before. What I see is the future trajectory of people's lives, the future trajectory of the world, the future trajectory of certain like political movements, institutions, anything. So what that means is I'm able to see the pathways that are on purpose and congruent and the pathways that are not. I also see all the way backwards through time to see the choices that were made that caused people to go off track or on track. So all of that exists because even though you and I are yakking away in the now right now I'm yakking a lot, in the now, what happens is in the now we make choices and have conversations that set in motion a future. And my interest is in assisting people to fly forward on that ride such that they're living the piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth that they were meant to be. And when you do that, in sort of tandem with the subject of this particular interview. When you actually align to the trajectory that you've set in motion and consciousness agreed to go on with you, and your 50 trillion cells agreed to, as you go on that journey, it's a journey that's now consistent with the trajectory of consciousness. Since you're a particle of consciousness, you're now consistent with the entire ride that the universe is going on, forward and out. You're just doing your little piece of the puzzle. So when you do that, you're in the flow with all of the abundance of the entire universe. So the importance of the work that we're doing around our multidimensional nature and embodying our multidimensional DNA, as I did in order to heal. But I was told very clearly, it's like, you got to help other people do this so they can live their piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth, and more heaven expands. So does that kind of give you a context?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you talk about, it sounds like you were given a pretty clear message of what your path is.
Yes.
What about for people who are not getting that kind of download? How do they know that they're on the right path, and how do they get there?
So, well, from the point of view of, in a very colloquial kind of a normal way, I can say that how you get there is, you know, if I was to simplify it right down, you get out of the way of consciousness, and you actually stop forcing things, and you start learning the tools to become a master of the language that your cells are speaking, that your consciousness is speaking. We're being served up. So there's a language that consciousness speaks. When I started studying all of this, I found out that trees and plants and animals give off biophotons. Scientists in Russia and Germany were studying that. And the biophotons were going, in fact, I even went to Italy, and there's this woman that actually hooks up diodes to trees and measures, you can actually hear the song that the trees are singing back and forth to each other. That's an interpretation of the light that they're giving off. So it's a scientific reality. She did it her way. But those photon packages of light that we give off, that plants and animals give off, they get received. Our receptor sites on our cells actually even receive photon packages of light from the sun. They're called synchrotronic radiation. And we get codes and instructions in those photon packages of light. And this might sound way out there, but it's actually science. It's not a woo-woo concept. Because of my background is in accounting and economics, I went on a search for the science behind this rather than having this be some nebulous woo-woo concept. So since we're being communed with, and we are the manifestation, we're not the most important thing in 3D. Our multidimensional nature, you know, most of what consciousness is made up of is 99.139% pure possibility. When you ask a physicist, some of them say 65%, some of them say 93%. It depends on what you're asking them. But basically, 90 some odd percent of what we're comprised of and what everything is comprised of, they don't even know what it is. And when I look holographically at the world, it looks like pure potential. It looks like things that haven't landed in 3D yet. We have landed in 3D, which means that we have a purpose in 3D. And in 3D, we get to go on that purpose, but we're still a manifestation of consciousness coming into 3D here to live, to create upon creation with a whole bunch of senses and have fun and have great conversations and really love up this life and go on an adventure. Most of us are actually trying to control it, trying to stay safe, and trying to survive. But since we're particles of consciousness, mostly, we're not here to survive. Consciousness, the universe, God is not here to simply survive. It wants to expand. So that's why when we're in survival mode, we feel small and we don't feel good. And that's why when we're creating, we feel great because we're in alignment with the forward motion while of creation. That is a language. Those photon packages of light from consciousness is how we get instincts and intuition. But when we're trying to control life, we're living from our head. And when we want to survive and create upon creation, we're actually living from our communion with consciousness. So the long answer to your question is simply learn the language. Learn the language that is being spoken to you that's far more instinctual and comes from those photon packages of light that are trying to serve you. And your cells, 50 to 75 trillion cells, are listening to that language and interpreting it. And you're receiving it. But we're in our heads, not listening to what's actually being communicated so we can fly. So
this language, intuition, is that?
No, it's much bigger than that. Intuition is one thing. Mm-hmm. But being able to understand what nature is saying to us, that, in nature, everything works perfectly, effortlessly. One way or another, it's communing with itself. Trees and butterflies and everything is communicating. Even when we change the variables, it readjusts. That's who we are, but we don't operate that way. We try to control life. So there's communion with nature, there's instincts, there are guidance realms, there are people that have been here before, guides that are trying to let us know what the easier ways are so that we don't have to do it all by ourselves. There are manifestational realms. All of these are multidimensional aspects of who we are. And intuition is just one little piece of it. But all of the rest of those comprise who we really are. And you can learn all of it. It isn't unique to me. Mm-hmm. That's what I was shown when I went through my healing. What I was shown is everyone can learn it. And I was put here as the world's greatest skeptic, being an economist, to actually show people very pragmatically how you can line up with your piece of the puzzle and understand that language. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And it sounds like when you're talking holographically, all these things kind of existing at once, that it's not linear.
No.
And so it's kind of like, I'm just imagining it kind of like a geometric type of vision. And I remember when I first started working with Karina, she talked about what I wanted already existed. Right? It wasn't about me starting here and literally creating this. It was about claiming what was already there.
Can I actually language that slightly differently?
Yes. Please.
That is true, but let's add to it.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind is receiving from the holographic universe. You have to understand that what you've received is a vision of what's possible. I had this woman in our Get Out of Your Way program once say to me, I manifest, you put this thing on my vision board, and I manifested the red truck that was on my vision board. So she had this idea for the red truck. I said, did you know that your higher levels and the multidimensional nature of infinite wisdom kind of already knew that a red truck was coming your way because it's already the trajectory that you were on? You just happen to line up your vibration, your frequency, with what it felt like to have that red truck. And so the idea of red truck came to you from the already created universe that already existed. So it's really important that we understand that by the time we get the vision or the idea of something, it's been done for eons. It's not just that it's done right now. It's been done for eons. You're actually catching up to something that consciousness loves you so much that it was always going to give it to you. So, yeah.
So that vibration, that vibration or that frequency that we connect to or raise up to in order to have this vision, in order to experience this vision that you say was already created, how can we do that more consciously or with more intention so that we can be having what we want now?
Right. So here's one of the issues. One of the issues is when The Secret first came out and we talked about law of attraction and intention, people in kind of the world of personal growth and new age and all that kind of stuff, we got a lot of people, not everyone, but we started talking a lot about intention, and we started talking a lot about how do we get what we want, which it's true that we actually are designed to have everything we want. But the problem is that most people's wantings are actually coming from the egoic part of them that wants to stay safe. So I'll give you an example. If my low back was hurting and I said, I am afraid that I won't be able to do my job because I won't be able to sit to be able to talk to nice people like you. So now I'm afraid and I need whoever. And then I start even thinking I need a chiropractor, and I start to imagine who I think I need, because it's all coming from fear. The problem is that, so remember what I said at the beginning. It's very interesting, Megan, because this is a different kind of an interview. I've never actually explained so in such great detail exactly where this is all coming from, but I will share with you that there was a reason for that. Because if you imagine that the collective of your spirit, the skill sets, the personality traits, the multidimensional abilities, your natural propensities, like if you can sing or mediate or you're a great organizer, whatever those are, those have evolved over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes in a human body and maybe even other bodies, and it's evolved to right now. So if you imagine, like, just think all the lives that you've lived in the contrast, and you've been the perpetrator, you've been the victim, you've been the creator, you've been the king, you've been all of it. And imagine all of the askings that you had, like millions of them. And they were all put in the future, and there's so much waiting. I mean, oh my God, it's so exciting. That future trajectory, which is designed to expand upon heaven so that we just keep expanding upon more and more heavenly flow. We get to experience that with all of our physical and non-physical senses. It really is a privilege to be alive. Most people don't experience it that way. That's why they are afraid, and they make intentions based on what would make them comfortable. But what would make you comfortable is about survival. So when you say, how do I get what I want? The problem is so many people hear that as, how do I get what I want so that I'm comfortable and I survive? Meanwhile, you're a particle of God that doesn't want to survive. So already the idea in your head of wanting something is inconsistent with who you really are. So there's the what I want, but what we think is what I want. The I is actually the ego and the fear and the control and all that kind of stuff. But what we have to understand, which is so much bigger than that, is that the collective of who we really are is the embodiment of the intention of everything you've ever lived. You're already the living intention for this most magnificent life, because you are creator consciousness. The issue is not so much the intention. You've intended your butt off. In fact, do you think that God has to intend, or creation has to intend? Right? Probably not. It just flows with, it continues to flow and expand with what it's already put into motion. So what if the issue was not so much the intention, but actually the getting out of the way of the natural unfoldment of what's already coming our way? And that understanding intention is a part of our evolution, because to understand intention and law of attraction is to kind of understand that we're more than just three-dimensional, and that consciousness, which is 99% of us, is already operating for us. So now it's getting out of the way of the part of us that's already operating for us, and learning to commune directly with all of consciousness, with the communication that is already happening. It cannot not happening. We have 75 trillion cells, communing directly with those photon packages of light, guiding us towards the most magnificent life. And we're working so hard to try to control it so that we get what we want, when in actuality, more than what you ever imagined is coming to you if you would only get out of the way of it and learn the language. And I know that I'm speaking a very different language for a lot of people, but this is the evolution of the idea of, working so hard to intend. And it's a powerful evolution, and it's so much friggin' easier, Megan.
Well, it sounds like that we've all been, well, not all of us, but those of us in this law of attraction type of arena.
Yes.
Feel as though we have more control than we really do. And what we are experiencing now is it's like we're catching up to what was already created. So
right.
us to be trying to create right now in this moment is wasted energy, when what we're doing now is experiencing what has already been projected, already been created.
Yeah. It's so funny. I literally just did a Facebook Live, not minutes before our interview. It's so funny that you would say that. If you imagine, okay, so Megan, see if you can really feel this. Just breathe in and get in your cells and feel what I'm about to say, rather than intellectualizing it all. Just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
All of consciousness is you. 99% of you is just particles waiting to express in 3D. So we're completely all chemical, right? Now imagine that we don't perceive ourselves that way. And we operate like everything that manifests, you have to work so hard to get it. Even in law of attraction, you have to imagine it, then you have to feel it, then you have to do a picture, and then a vision board, and you have to, all this stuff. But we're consciousness. That's not how consciousness works. That's not how consciousness flows. So now imagine one day you wake up and you realize that you've set into motion particles of consciousness that someone else could line up with. It doesn't necessarily have to be you, but it's inevitable. And as long as you don't embody that it's inevitable, there's always going to be resistance. You're always going to have symptoms like maybe a headache or neck tension or whatever that's going to tell you that actually, if you let go of what you think it should look like and how you think it should be, the universe will deliver what I like to call or betters. Someone else might call it a miracle, but I don't like to call it miracle because it's really normal. So, but it's being willing to learn that language and being willing to step into what's presenting rather than trying to micromanage. And I mean, that is true abundance. You're in flow with the entire universe, with consciousness itself. So you've already set it into motion. And whenever you don't line up with what's already calling you, you're going to feel resistance in your body. So your body has all these symptoms and all these things that happen that we don't pay attention to. In fact, we try to take pills for them, when in actuality, it's a communication to assist us, to redirect us to our higher path. And it's very specific communication. So everything we need is like right here, right now. It's very exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. Can you feel that? Can you feel it?
It is, like you said, it's not up here,
yeah.
Right? It's almost everywhere.
Yes.
So it's not that it's not up here, right?
Yeah.
It's a different way up there.
Yes.
So how would one go about learning this language? I need to know this language.
Well, so there's a few, I mean, the wide awakening, that's all we teach, right? Because you can imagine it's a pretty big deal, because it's kind of like the evolution of what's being taught out there. So it's, we're pretty diligent about it. And one of the things that's really important is to get your brain to know the deeper truth about how consciousness and physics works. And me having the background in science, I'm like a big fan of having people's minds be completely at peace and giving them the evidence so that it's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Then what happens is the cool part, Megan. What happens is I call it a left brain, right brain reconciliation. You know, that woman who on TED Talks did Stroke of Insight. So good. Such a great book. So what she did is her left brain stroked out and her right brain was connected to all of consciousness, and she realized everything was possible. It's such a great example of what I'm talking about. But how do you harness everything is possible in 3D? So it's taking the right brain's knowing that everything is possible and being able to see and feel it, but then grounding it with the left brain, taking heaven, bringing it to earth through the corpus callosum, and actually having a conversation with the left brain to open up to match the frequency more of the right brain. When you do that, you can imagine your entire biochemistry in your body changes. So what that means is the photon packages of light that you emanate, instead of intending with your mind, you start to line up with the intentions that you've always had. So now what you're doing is you're changing your overall default level of magnetics, what you can receive. So that's the first thing. So that's one of our techniques, is like, that's the first one. And there's a specific way of doing it. The second thing, which is such a simple thing, but it's just a piece, but I found it really, I love it, is get an evidence journal. Thank you, Natalie Ledwell. So an evidence journal is basically evidence of how everything is coming to you without effort, because you want to consistently convince your left brain that it doesn't have to be effortful. So you're collecting evidence every night before you go to bed. It's a cool idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the third thing is we have something called the 12 Days of Awakening. And the 12 Days of Awakening, what we do actually is those left brain, right brain reconciliations. And the first three are like the basis for the major, shifts in your consciousness. So what we do is we provide the first 3 days of awakening. We call them the 12 Days of Awakening. The first 3 days of awakening are so powerful. They're so juicy. And they're around abundance, they're around love, and they're around your relationships, smooth and fluid relationships with others. So that's what they're about. And so what we do is we basically do the left brain, right brain reconciliations such that people really start to experience in their cells the shift. And then if you do the evidence journal, so much more happens. And then after that, that's the beginning of this journey. After that, there's there's a real asking to start to pragmatically apply the principles of understanding the language of consciousness and how it's talking to you. So that language of consciousness is speaking a language through your cells. And there's a program we do called the Essence Technique that does that. But the beginning, the basis, the pragmatic beginnings of that are definitely in those first 3 days of awakening.
Got it. I love that. And you talk about this consciousness as, I'm assuming that the consciousness that you're speaking of is what we could call God or source, and something that Karina mentioned. Yes, no?
Yeah, it's like, it's hard to put a language on it because people project meaning on all those words. If you think of all of existence, and that 99% of all of existence is stuff that our scientists don't even know anything about, and it operates in the realms of other dimensions that you have to have multidimensional tools to find out about those other dimensions, right? But we don't. We have 3-dimensional tools, so we can only go so far. And then a huge portion of that is unmanifested stuff. So if you imagine it's all that is, including something we wouldn't even know to ask, and the concept of God, and the concept of the universe, and the concept of goddess, and just think of it as when I talk about consciousness, I mean all of it, the whole thing, regardless of what your perception is of creation or God, or I'd say the closest word is probably creation, that is more all-inclusive maybe, I don't know. So yeah.
So there's all-inclusive energy.
Yes.
Because I'm totally like getting this vision of what you're saying about our perception of God is actually not everything, right? It's just that perception. So this all-encompassing energy, in what way can where does wealth and abundance come into play with that? Because it's almost like, it's like I'm catching up with what you're saying, and then it's like, well, if I'm only going to be reaping what has already been set in motion, and I'll just let it flow, just be in the flow and not control it, is abundance even in my path then? Is wealth even up?
That is such a great question, Megan. And I'm going to say this, only abundance is in your path.
Woo! I like that.
There is not, the only path in the entire universe is more. Like there is, whatever it is that you're open to, you can have more of. So there is, the entire conversation today was really about abundance, because the trajectory, like think about, I always say to people, you know, this is a really interesting fact. 7.5 billion people on the planet. When I went back and I looked at some data, I don't know if this is true, it doesn't matter, but when you add up, you take away the last 3 generations and you add up all the other generations prior to the last 3, it added up to 7.5 billion people almost. So I was like, wow, every consciousness that's ever been poured in through a body, there's now that many people, that many consciousness pouring through bodies on earth. Like, that's really wild.
Yeah.
And imagine just pretend that those 7.5 billion spirits are the ones that are here right now. They're the ones that have lived the raping, the pillaging, the taking over countries, the being the king who slayed everybody, the being the good guy who tried to save the peasants, like all of it. It's like all of it. And imagine being on the receiving end of yucky stuff, really pretty egoic, power-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings are wired to the universe, and the universe is benevolent and loving and vast and wide. So we're particles of that. So you can imagine the desires that human beings have launched. We're creators, so our desires create in consciousness. So imagine whether you were the plunderer or the plunderee, you know, what you launched into your future based on the contrast, based on the fact that we're all love-based pieces of consciousness. We would always be asking for more fluidity, more abundance, more ability to thrive, more ability. The universe is a thriving universe. So we're always asking for something that's towards that thriving. So what's awaiting you might be your own version of that, but it cannot not be abundant. So learning the language of consciousness and learning the language of your body and the language of those photons is to flow in massive abundance, sometimes monetary, like absolutely monetary, absolutely love, absolutely whatever you think it can be, right? So whatever you allow yourself to open to without getting in the way by attaching to your ancestry or your fears. So it
sounds so easy that it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, really, can I experience more? I love my life now.
Yes.
Can I experience more of this by just being? Right? By just letting? It just seems so...
It's not just letting, though. That's not, no, it's not. It's, there's so much to this. It's not like lying on a lawn chair, drinking a mojito, thinking about how amazing you are.
Okay.
That is not it. We're creators, which means that we're supposed to be completely involved. It's more being in a dance with consciousness, allowing yourself in the present moment to actually understand what you're being guided to physically do in order to expand upon what's happening on earth. And then based on our action, it's like being in a dance. It's like I take a step, tango a little, the universe goes, oh, I like that tango, let's do the salsa. Then you do the salsa a little bit, and then it's like, oh, the salsa was good, let's do the Viennese waltz, and so on and so forth. So what you have to understand is that you're in a dance with the multidimensional aspects of you, and they're not separate, they're together. But the problem is we operate from our heads. So getting out of the way of consciousness first is understanding how much we are in the way. That's step number one. And kind of getting rid of the dense, not getting rid of them, rising your frequency so high that those dense thought forms are actually below you and they don't take you out anymore. So you can be present to what you're being called to. Because the slow route is to try to excavate every belief system that's contra your path. That will take forever. That's like very karmic and boring. And
so can we bypass these, as opposed to we can bypass them without having to deal with them?
No. No, but you can transmute thousands of them without having to get involved. Remember, we're born creators. If there's a faster way to transmute the old density, in our work, like in Get Out of Your Own Way, we transmute hundreds of old belief systems at a time. But I will guarantee you that there'll be 2 or 3 that come up that you ain't going to transmute metaphysically. You have to be aware of what they are, not only because for your own confidence that you've evolved and that you have done something and that you participated, but also because oftentimes the things that you talk about out loud and you transmute out loud are things that get paid forward to other people in your life, and you need to be aware of them.
Oh, yeah, good. I love that. And to go back just a little bit, where'd my thought go? It was about the vibration.
Yes.
How do you feel when you're vibrating or when you're in line with your frequency, with this consciousness? What does it feel like? Because I think probably what a lot of us are feeling is the resistance to the consciousness. So what does it actually feel like being in the stance and taking action on these divinely guided action steps?
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
We'll get there in 15 seconds. You ready?
Yeah.
Take your consciousness behind your eyes. Okay, you can close your eyes or not. Just bring your consciousness behind your eyes. Now take all the things you've been thinking about and how you've been maybe even wrestling with, but what about this? Well, what about that, as I'm talking? Just put it all outside of you. Pretend it's in a field far, far away, okay? Because you can come back to it, I promise. If you want to bring it back, fine. But let's take our consciousness behind our eyes. Now close your eyes and take your consciousness into yourselves. Now bring your consciousness present to yourselves. Now understand that millions of photon packages of light from trees, from consciousness, from other people, from ideas that you've had are being exchanged with your cells through your telomeres and receptor sites. Scientific fact. Right now, as we speak, constantly. And bring your presence, your consciousness, to that exchange. Photon packages of light receiving through the cells millions at a time, and being sent out based on the decisions that you've made. And as you breathe in, ask your oxygen breath to cause a surge of the incoming photon packages of light, and your out breath to be a surge of the outgoing photon packages of light. And take like 3 breaths where it's like, and it's like, whoa, big surge of photon packages. And breathe out and like feel them. Feel your communication with all of consciousness in the world going out. Let's do it 3 times. Now imagine that this presence is what's happening all the time and that all you really cared about was understanding what those photons were saying to you, only the parts that mattered, because more than 2/3 of it is just running your body. And imagine that all you cared about was your dance with infinite wisdom in the present moment, like we are right now. And can you feel the tingles in your body, Megan?
Absolutely.
So it feels like a very tingly life.
Yeah. Oh, that is good.
Right? So cool. And it's so easy to get there because we were born to have it be easy. But that still doesn't help you interpret the information, but it does help you see that it's a reality that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. So really powerful. I'm like right there in the flow. I'm like, tell us about what your free gift is for the audience.
The free gift is called the 3 Days of Awakening. The 3 Days of Awakening assists you to reconcile the left brain, right brain.
That's right.
So that your biochemistry and your actions can be taken from the space that we just went through, right? It can be taken from, your actions can come from full presence rather than from fears about the past happening again or fears about the future not being great. It assists you to come from the place that everything is happening for you. And as you train yourself, and those first 3 days are very powerful. And of course, people can go on to do all 12 days, but those first 3 days set up the infrastructure so that you can begin to feel what it's like to have this way of being be your default. And that's our free gift. Our free gift leads to something called eventually Yessence. It would be the next step of that, but this will really help people to ground in. It's fun. You'll see. You do it every morning for like 20 minutes, every morning for 3 days in a row, and you'll see the changes. And it'll give you a real sense of what it's like to bring your body to a deeper truth, because a whole bunch of beliefs will leave, like tens of beliefs will leave because we bring you to deeper understandings of how consciousness is. Therefore, the old understandings have to go away because you can't believe that anymore, because it won't make sense to your left brain anymore. So it's a way of changing your default magnetics so that you can receive better, if that makes sense.
I can hardly wait. Thank you so much for this conversation today and for the free gift.
Yes, no problem.
Everyone, go check it out. Go get that from her. Have a wonderful day.
Wasn't that absolutely incredible? I just love how every single episode has these golden nuggets of wisdom that begin to awaken the light in your heart and unlock your infinite wealth. So if you want to own this episode and go deeper into activating your wealth, I invite you to get my VIP access package. I've designed it so that you can not only own the entire season of the Activate Your Wealth Code show, but you can begin to activate your wealth codes through my 7-day wealth transformation teleclass, as well as a secret wealth code training that I've put together for you. And you're going to get a session with my Soul Wealth team to begin to design your personal steps to activating your wealth. To get this package, just click the link right on this page that says Get Access Now, and you will get all of it. You'll own the season, and you will get all the bonuses, well worth over $3,600 in value for nearly the fraction of the cost. All right, everyone, I'll see you on the next episode.